Turning now to our program, please welcome Jordan Primako, Director, Governmental Relations, City of Milwaukee, who will introduce today's speaker.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I'm honored to speak here today to introduce someone that I've had the pleasure of working with from his first day in office as the mayor of the city of Milwaukee, Mayor Cavalier Johnson. It's been a real privilege of my life to be able to work for a politician like Mayor Johnson. What many of us don't see behind the scenes is the thankless work, the time that he puts in, and the commitment that he has to each and every one of his city's residents, its business leaders, to make Milwaukee a better place to live and work and play. Mayor Johnson was born and raised in the city of Milwaukee into a large family. As a child, he found himself frequently moving, leading him to attend 6 different elementary schools. His childhood provided him with a depth of understanding of our challenges our community faces, from violence and evictions to food insecurity. Yet his story also tells the potential and opportunity we have here in Milwaukee. As a teen, he was selected to participate in a YMCA pre-college program, sponsor a scholar, which instilled in him a passion for public service and to make Milwaukee better for future generations. A graduate of Bayview High School and the University of Wisconsin, Mayor Johnson returned to Milwaukee to work at the Milwaukee Area Workforce Investment Board, now known as Employ Milwaukee. He began his elected career when he was elected as the 2nd District Alderman in 2016 and subsequently became the Common Council President as elected by his peers on the Common Council in 2020. Upon former Mayor Barrett's departure to serve as an ambassador, Mayor Johnson assumed office in 2021, subsequently winning an election in 2022 and re-election for a full 4-year term in 2024. Since assuming office, Mayor Johnson has attacked the city's challenges head-on, including stabilization of the city pension through the passage of Act 12 in the state capitol, increasing public safety coming out of the COVID crisis, prioritizing complete streets and lowering reckless driving, and creating innovative programs such as Camp Rise to provide workforce development for our vulnerable youth. He now lives on the city's west side with his wife Dominique, son and twin daughters, all 3 MPS students. And I've had the pleasure of working alongside and traveling with the mayor to do work in Madison, Washington, D.C., and around the country. And now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing him to my peers in the Rotary Club. Please help me in welcoming Mayor Cavalier Johnson.
All right, good afternoon, Milwaukee Rotary. How is everybody doing today? It's an election day, so you got to be more excited than that. I'm excited about it. I know some folks are excited for it to be over, as I am too. So first, a couple things. I want to thank Jordan for that great introduction. Thank you so much, Jordan. It's a pleasure to work alongside you as well. Tom, thank you so much for mentioning that I am no longer 14 years old. If you can believe it, in November, I'll be 40. So we've known each other for a very, very long time. Madam President, thank you so much for having me, especially joining you at the head table here. I know you had on the screen there some of the folks who are joining as guests, some of which I'm very fond of, like my former colleague on the City Council, Alderman Michael Murphy. Some others I simply tolerate, like my Chief of Staff, Nick Desiato, but that's okay. I want to say to Patrick, please tell your brother Tim that I say hello. Good man. And I want to say to Emily, welcome home. So there's a couple of items that I want to touch on here today. They are about elections, about immigration, and about our city budget, which we are in the midst of forming for 2027. And so we'll discuss them in that order. On elections, again, today is election day, so if you haven't made a plan to vote, if you haven't voted early, please do make a plan to vote. Every vote does count. I was at a rally just last night, as a matter of fact, and I had mentioned that even with all the polls out there saying this is going to happen, that's going to happen, the one poll that matters the most is the poll that happens on election day. So everybody, please, take the time to go out and vote today. I know it's a little rainy out, but don't let that deter you. Please go out and make sure that you cast your ballot. Yes, please, yeah. Go vote, go vote, go vote, go vote. Go vote. So Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee opens 176 different polling locations on Election Day with literally hundreds and hundreds of voting wards in those locations. It's a really big, it's a massive operation with little to no room for error. Now, the people who run our elections, I have worked with them over the years. I've worked alongside them in previous elections. You know, these folks are honest. They've got no agenda other than a commitment to civic integrity. All right, the folks that work our elections are really, really incredible individuals. So it highly offends me. It highly offends me when there are those folks who falsely impugn their work. I got the chance to see some of these folks just recently, and I can tell you that these folks are true patriots. They are. This is a democracy, and the whole reason that this exists and continues to move forward is because we have folks like them who step up every single election in order to make this thing keep going. So I've got nothing but the utmost respect for those folks, and it really boils my blood when people, no matter where they are, whether they're in Wisconsin or Washington or anywhere else, tries to say that they're cheating or doing something nefarious when that just is not the case. So that's how I feel. You can imagine, though, how some of these folks feel as an election worker who has done absolutely nothing wrong, and then they have the FBI showing up at their door, unannounced, with questions. And those questions being based on irrational and unsubstantiated accusations about election denying people, and some of the things that they said. Some of these folks are just kind of far out there with their accusations about what's happening during our elections. To me, that's not the America that I so sought to serve when I was a 14-year-old kid, as Tom was talking about. When I was encouraged to get involved in public life all those years ago, I didn't see it that way. That's not America to me. To me, that seems more like intimidation. And so for us, I'll tell you this, our vote count in Milwaukee, it's accurate. And we've got a number of precautions that are in place. We double check our counts. And yes, absolutely, we in the city of Milwaukee, like every other place all around the state, we follow the law. There's nothing nefarious that's happening here in the city. I wouldn't allow it. So yes, in a system involving hundreds of temporary workers, at times, yes, there can be human errors. Like, we're all human beings. Human beings operate our elections. However, the system is designed to catch those mistakes. And the ultimate backstop are recount elections, which we have engaged in over the years. So you may have, leading up to this election, you may have seen, read about, you may have heard the back and forth that I've had with the Vice President of the United States last month. And not just last month, it seems like every time he lands in Wisconsin, we end up having some words. But I sent a letter to him in the days leading up to his visit in Milwaukee, and I said that the investigation that the FBI was engaging in here was an attempt to undermine faith in American democracy. That's exactly what I felt, and that's what I wrote to the Vice President. I told him that there seemed to be no justification for the investigation, and the evidence of wrongdoing is entirely absent. Because it is. That's the fact of the matter. And importantly, I've said that he's intimidating honest, public servants. Not just him, but the President's administration in the way that they are applying the forces, the federal agents and federal forces in their administration. It's just wrong. They're scaring people. So I didn't just stop there. I actually invited the Vice President to join me to go to our Elections Operations Center. And his response, as you can imagine, unfortunately, was just sort of flippant, and he passed on going to the tour. He said something at the time about this example of his 6-year-old son, stealing cookies from a cookie jar or whatnot. And my thought was like, okay, actually, if your 6-year-old son did steal cookies from the cookie jar, you'd have some evidence, right? You'd have an empty jar, right? There'd be a trail of crumbs around. That's not happening in elections in Milwaukee. And I think that's part of the reason why he and others refused to join me on the tour. But a week and a half ago, United States Senator Tammy Baldwin, she did join me on the tour. And I was grateful for that because she got a up close look at our elections process. And I know that she was impressed because I was right there along with her. Unfortunately, Vice President didn't join us on that, and neither too has United States Representative Tom Tiffany, who I've invited to join on the tour because he too has similarly raised doubts about elections taking place here in Milwaukee. And he's not taken up the invitation to visit our Elections Operations Center to see firsthand, and this is what I want them to see just how careful we are and just how we take our elections in Milwaukee. Another topic is immigration. Now, Milwaukee is in the Trump administration's target this way too, with overly aggressive immigration prosecution. Now, to be very, very clear, with folks who are here, undocumented people who commit violent crimes, serious crimes, and felonies, I think that those folks should be deported. They should be. And that, I think, is very consistent with what I've said ever since I became the mayor of the city, is that individuals who commit acts of death, harm, or destruction in our community should be held to account, including individuals who come here from other places. I think that the ultimate accountability for them is deportation, and I stand by that. For me, public safety has been a two-pronged approach. It's accountability and it's prevention. Jordan talked a little bit about some of the preventative programs we have, like Camp Rise and some of the other things that we've been very proud of. But if somebody commits an act of violence, then I'm sorry, but folks got to be held accountable for that. And all you have to do is turn on, the news at night or talk to somebody who's been wronged, somebody's been hurt. Folks who are out there releasing balloons when somebody that they care about has been harmed, been hurt, worse yet, killed. What they're saying is that they want justice, right? They want accountability is what they're saying. And I agree with those people. I agree with them because I think that what they don't want to see and what I don't want to see is that somebody who is so willing to hurt somebody or to kill somebody, to think that they've got a license to go into some other neighborhood, some other community and hurt somebody else. So those folks have to be held to account. But what we're seeing here with the Trump administration's application of immigration law has been entirely inappropriate. I mean, think about it. You got masked men, these masked ICE agents in unmarked vehicles, smashing car windows. This sort of stuff, it is simply just unacceptable in a civil society. And think about this, something that I've thought about as a dad, right? If some of these agents were to go in an unmarked vehicle with masks on, and they're not identifying themselves as officers, and they snatch somebody off the street and they toss them into some unmarked vehicle, how are you supposed to know that it's the federal government? How are you supposed to know that it's ICE? Just imagine the terror, the horror that families would think with that going on. That could be anybody impersonating an officer and taking somebody that you care about to some other place. That is terrifying, and it's no way for a law enforcement agency to behave. That's certainly not how we behave in the city of Milwaukee with our Milwaukee Police Department. I believe that law enforcement must be conducted with respect and conducted with the least amount of force necessary and honoring the dignity of those that we interact with. That's the message that I deliver to our new recruits in the Milwaukee Police Department every single time we have recruits at our police academy. Every single time. Because that's not just what I expect, that's what our citizens out there expect in Milwaukee too. So I'm very disturbed when I read stories about a local man who was arrested for deportation, even though he's in the midst of legal proceedings to gain permanent residency, when he's married to a U.S. citizen, when he's got a small child, and when he's got no criminal record. Sometimes I think, what in the world is the federal government thinking? What are they trying to accomplish here other than scaring people? Those are things I'm thinking about. The record of shooting deaths by ICE agents is alarming in Minnesota, And in Maine and Texas, overall, the federal government has simply failed us on immigration policy. And I'm old enough to remember when this election was, getting started, this past presidential election, and when Joe Biden was president of the United States, and he worked very closely with one of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, Senator Langford out of Oklahoma, on a bill to strengthen border security and immigration policy of the United States. And unfortunately, and I think this is unfortunate because it needs to be fixed, Donald Trump, the president, when he was running at the time, called up members of Congress and said, don't support that because that hurts him politically. This isn't about politics. This is about doing what's right for our country, right? And now we're living with the consequence of what his fix is, which is to have agents like this going in and terrorizing communities all over our country. And it's just not right. It's just not right. As I mentioned, one of the other things I want to talk about is the city budget. And as you all know, and you've heard, not just from me, but from other executives in government that have to put together these massive documents for spending, putting the budget together is more important than an obligation that we have as elected officials. In simplest terms, a budget allocates money to departments to conduct their business. We all know that. It's more than a financial document. However, it's a declaration of our priorities and the implementation of the policies of our administration. So these days I'm spending a lot of time, as I do every single year during this time, reviewing options and making choices for the city budget in 2027. So for example, public safety is a top priority for me, has been since I became the mayor, before that even too, but certainly since. How much money do I direct towards police? That's a question. How much money do we direct towards violence prevention efforts? I talked about accountability and prevention. Do we spend more money on fire trucks? What about potholes? Nobody said anything about potholes. Should I work to increase fees or fines regarding our city employees? Should we have raises for those employees that keep up with inflation? These are the questions that I have to ask myself and ask my staff and engage with the community to get answers to. Again, roads, I am out. I am out there constantly, all across the city. And leading up to this budget, I've been in people's backyards, I've been in their living rooms, I've of course been at a number of parades as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country. And the thing that people tell me the most, and this doesn't matter where I am in the city, far northwest side, far south side, east side, west side, you name it, folks are always asking me about the roads and can we do more to invest in streets? So those are all questions that I have to grapple with as we are developing the budget. And look, these are decisions, dozens of decisions, I believe probably even hundreds of decisions that I have to make each and every single day that affects our neighbors and affects the future of the city as it relates to the conversations we're having relative to building our city budget. Now, state law constrains Milwaukee in a number of ways as it relates to budget building. There are restrictions on how much we can increase property tax collections. It limits what fees we can collect, state government does. State law says we must increase the number of police and firefighters, which is something that I've wanted to do since I became the mayor, but now it's state law that requires an increase there. The 2027 city budget will again exceed $2 billion. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money that we're talking about. And we've got to match expenditures with revenue. In other words, as it is every single year and for most levels of government, peculiarly outside of federal government, I think, our budgets have to balance. Our major sources of money are property tax collections, fees that we levy for specific services, and then shared revenue from the state of Wisconsin, and then of course our 2% city sales tax. And the funding array has changed over the years, most notably state shared revenue. And this is a tidbit that I think folks should pay and understand, should pay a little bit more attention to and understand that if shared revenue had simply kept pace with inflation over the course of the last 3 decades, Milwaukee would receive about $250 million more dollars each year. Think about that, $250 million. And last year, I had a budget hole that we had to climb out of about $100 million to balance the budget, and we did it. Now, because we made some difficult decisions last year, the budget gap is not as big, but it is similar in size. It is still pretty big. It's about $97 million that we got to climb out of. Meanwhile, as the slide shows, if shared revenue from the state had simply kept pace with inflation, we'd have $250 million more than what we do. So yes, because a change in state law, we can now collect a sales tax in the city of Milwaukee. But that money is not money that we can apply to just any space or any place. We have to use that money for specific purposes that are strictly outlined in state law. So that means we have to use those dollars to pay legacy pension obligations. And then on the other side of doing that, with money that happens to be left over, and that we can invest those dollars into public safety, into police, and in fire. But I should tell folks or remind folks here, because I know we had a lot of community conversations around the sales tax some years ago. Without the sales tax, Milwaukee would have become insolvent. We would have basically been the next Detroit if that had happened. And there are severe consequences that would have followed from that if we did not take that action. If we didn't do that, then roughly half of the Milwaukee Police Department would have been gone. Roughly a quarter of the Milwaukee Fire Department would have vanished. They would have had to go. Hundreds and hundreds of city employees. I mean, think about the folks who fill potholes, the folks that collect garbage and recycling, things like that. Public health nurses, those sort of folks that deliver quality services in our city, they would have been at risk. We would have had a lower standard and quality of life in the city of Milwaukee if we had not had Act 12 passed and had the ability to raise the additional revenues that the sales tax provided us with. But even still, while I'm grateful that we were able to get an increase and it was necessary, because we do have such a gap, it didn't cover obviously this entire gap that we have here. So we still have challenging budgets. So I've instructed every single city department to submit proposed budgets that continue current services, but to do so without new programs or added efforts. And I've also asked for proposals to cut department budgets even more. So what I'm wrestling with, again, is a gap of about $100 million. And we will close that gap. Just like I mentioned, we closed the gap last year, just like the gap is closed every single year. It's state law. We have to balance our budgets. And we'll do that responsibly, without pushing costs into future years. We'll do it without clever budget tricks. But it's not a simple task. It's not balancing this budget. So here's how we spend the money, and it's all listed there on the screen. Thank you, Jordan, for being my IT support. This year, we added a new tool for residents to provide their input into the city budget. We've asked what's important to you, and we want to know. We have already received several responses, hundreds and hundreds of them, and we're looking for more responses from people across our community. So I'm encouraging everybody to participate. Let us know. Please take the survey. There's a QR code on the screen here. You could also go to engage.milwaukee.gov/budget. Take the survey. It's pretty quick. I think it's about 2 minutes or so to take just a few questions. And I want to hear directly from people about how we can deliver better services in the city of Milwaukee. So this is in addition, again, to myself going into people's backyards, going into people's living rooms, continuing to go out and knock on doors, which I haven't really stopped in the time that I've been in office, except for COVID, because I want to hear directly from people. And this is a great way for citizens across Milwaukee, folks who come into Milwaukee for work, pleasure, visiting, whatnot, to tell us what their priorities are. So again, I'm looking forward to what will happen next year, even beyond next year, to make Milwaukee fiscally sound and sustainable. In our efforts, I have prioritized innovation. I have prioritized efficiency. I've built partnerships that address everything from flooding prevention to pothole repair. You probably have seen a couple of potholes being filled around the city with a big brewer's mitt in it, highlighting our partnership with the Milwaukee Brewers to fill potholes. I'm hopeful that we can modify state law in the years ahead to add flexibility to the revenue that we receive in the city of Milwaukee. And I'm promoting growth for Milwaukee with more economic activity, more population as we go into the future, and continue to drive Milwaukee into a future, because I believe that when Milwaukee does well, when Milwaukee thrives, when Milwaukee is at its best and its strongest, that's a benefit not just to us, it's a benefit to our region, and it's a benefit to the entire state of Wisconsin. That's why I take this job so seriously, because I know the decisions that I make in this office have an effect on the city of Milwaukee, yes, but the tentacles of that reach much farther beyond that, right? The decisions that we make here, what happens out of Milwaukee affects the entire state of Wisconsin. So a strong Milwaukee equals a stronger Wisconsin, and that's exactly what I want to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for accepting our invitation today. It's great to have you back here at the Rotary Club. Those with questions can queue up behind Matt. Remember, succinct questions. There's going to be a lot of them.
Very succinct. Mayor Johnson, thanks so much for being here. Quick question on elections. We heard from previous speakers a couple weeks ago about Milwaukee election workers not being able to account or assess or look at signatures at all before Election Day. Do you support their ability to do what all the other counties do in terms of when they process those absentee or other ballots?
Yeah, I was I was so hopeful. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how disappointed I am in the fact that the state has not granted in a clean way the ability of the city of Milwaukee to be able to process ballots at least the day before Election Day. And this is the reason why, right? I want everybody's vote to count, but I also want to dispel all these rumors and myths, these untruths, these lies. That's what they are. They're lies about malfeasance that's happening in elections in Milwaukee. There's nothing going on. And then folks will say, oh, the late night ballot dumps in the city of Milwaukee. I don't want late night ballot dumps. I would prefer to have this stuff counted on election night. But we have so many votes that come in. We're the largest city in the state of Wisconsin. Like, roughly 10% of the state's population lives right here in the city. So I was hopeful that this last session of the legislature, we would have gotten a bill to allow us to process those ballots early. Unfortunately, there were tricks and games and politics that, came into play again. Unfortunately, we didn't get it done. So I'm hopeful in the next session, we'll be able to just do it, much like Florida, for instance, a state with a Republican legislature and a Republican governor. They do it, and it's no problem, and they know the results. I want the same thing to happen in Wisconsin, but I can't do it alone. I need the legislature, and particularly, I need the majority in the legislature, and it has been Republican since 2011, to play ball in order to make sure that we don't have the result that we've been seeing over the course of the last number of years. So I am disappointed by that, and we were so close, and it just didn't happen, unfortunately.
Thanks, Mayor Johnson. So just talking about the size of the police budget without compromising public safety, can you speak to some of the innovative ways that you guys are looking at reducing the size of the budget or reallocating dollars, again, without compromising public safety, to address issues in innovative, creative ways?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the Act 12 law requires us to grow the number of police officers in the city of Milwaukee. And even though that was one of the requirements that Republican legislators decided to add to Act 12, it was not out of line with what I wanted to do. I had already been working to increase the number of police officers in the city of Milwaukee, because that number had dropped over the course of the last number of years. And not because we wanted it to, is because we couldn't afford it. So those numbers dropped by attrition because The slide's not up there again, but as we pointed out, the state has been underfunding Milwaukee, and not just Milwaukee, but communities all across Wisconsin, right? So that's a problem that I'd also like to see us have more progress on this time around. But I mentioned before, as it relates to public safety, my goal is not just policing. It's not just accountability. It's also about prevention, right? And if we can find more opportunities, if we can find more ways to have, especially our young people, involved in something positive, like, Tom talked about this when he was up here. For me, it was the YMCA. And I'll be 40 again, not 14, and I still wear this YMCA wristband every single day. That's how I got started, and it means something. So if I can get more young people involved in positive things like that, then there probably would be less of a need for that number of law enforcement. I still want to have an adequate number, but it'd probably be less of a need for that. And just think about it, right? If fewer people are being arrested and are being jailed from the city of Milwaukee, just think about what the impacts of that are on the state of Wisconsin's Department of Corrections, right? It's one of the largest budget expenditures in the state of Wisconsin. And if the DOC's budget is getting smaller, that's tax relief to people all across the state of Wisconsin who pay into that, right? So that's what I mean by what happens here has an effect on what happens across the state. So I want to have an adequate number of police officers in the Milwaukee Police Department. I will, continue to put budgets forward that fully fund classes out of our police academy, the most that we possibly can do. I've been doing that for the past number of years. We'll continue to do that. I make no bones about it. But we also will continue to make investments on the preventative end, which, to your point, over the long term, I think will help to reduce the need to have such a muscular police presence or force.
Yeah, hi, Dan Jenkins. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So topic is housing, poverty. So Evicted was written in 2016. Interviewed all those folks in about 2008, so almost 20 years ago. Still 14,000 evictions in the city of Milwaukee. There's about 100,000 rental properties. And just looking, I think Wisconsin Watch did an article in 2023, and I asked Google myself, what has really changed since Evicted, was written in the city of Milwaukee? And it's hard from the federal side, right? So from the state side, from the county and city side, thoughts?
Yeah, so, and that's a very appropriate question. I did read Evicted. In fact, I recognize a number of the street names in the book because I lived on those same streets, right? Some of the stories that were mentioned in those books, I said it sounds very familiar because my family had gone through some of those exact same things that were written in Evicted. Like it was kind of like looking in a mirror when I was reading the book. And so one of the things that I get to do as mayor is use my lived experience to make greater impacts in our community. That's why we have the program like Camp Rise. Why? Because I participated in YMCA programs growing up, and I know the importance of mentorship and showing kids a way out of their neighborhoods where bad things may be happening and they may be exposed to just poverty and violence. When you open up an opportunity for kids, great things happen. This year, 2026, is the year of housing. Why? Again, it's me bringing my lived experience into this job as mayor. I know that housing is an issue. I know that affordability is an issue. Jordan mentioned in his introduction to me that I moved so many times when I was a kid. I went to 6 different elementary schools. 6. In fact, Lincoln Avenue Elementary School, the one that burned down just recently, that's where I graduated from 5th grade. Far and away from where I lived on the north side of the city of Milwaukee. So given my experience, my lived experience growing up here, I decided to apply some of those lessons, those lived lessons to this job as mayor in the year of housing. So these are some of the things that we've been doing over the years, including here in the year of housing. Working with Michael Murphy there when he was on the council along with me, we used a lot of federal dollars from President Joe Biden's administration, American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and we invested a significant amount of those dollars into housing, to take city-owned, tax-foreclosed properties that we hold that basically have no value to us because they're not generating taxes. We invested money into those properties to fix them up, providing an opportunity for young, usually entrepreneurs who may not have had an opportunity to break in to the system, for them to be able to fix some of those properties up and then sell them at reduced rates to homeowners, right? So we're using that in order to affect housing in Milwaukee. Just a few months ago, I got to join this couple. They've been married for 32 years, have 8 kids, never owned a home. Some of their kids are adults. Via that program, they are now, for the first time ever, they're now homeowners in the city of Milwaukee. When I graduated from college, I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college, University of Wisconsin. I know that when you get your first job, everybody, society thinks that, oh, you're good, you're fine, you graduated, you don't need any help or assistance. That's just not the case. It's not the case. And so now the city of Milwaukee has a workforce housing policy that we're enacting to help, especially those young professionals, to have an opportunity to live in a house where they're not also rent burdened in our city. So we're addressing that. In some of the neighborhoods that I lived in growing up, we're implementing a new tool with some of our partners, like the Community Development Alliance, the Habitat for Humanity, others, to create what we call backbone TIDs, where we're using these very interesting shapes and city-owned vacant lots to build affordable housing on those lots and creating more housing opportunities for folks in the city of Milwaukee. We've supported down payment assistance for folks in the city of Milwaukee who will become homeowners in the city. I say all this to say that we're addressing housing in Milwaukee in ways that I'm very, very proud of. And as folks here know, when you increase supply, it lowers the costs. That's also part of the reason why, when I became mayor, we had our first zoning update in, I usually say, 2 mayors, which is a long time in Milwaukee speak, right? So we had our first zoning update that allowed us to better impact housing development in the city of Milwaukee. So we're doing a lot of things to address housing because it is important, and I want to address those things that you talked about in that book, Evicted, that, again, I know all too well.
Hi, I'm Teresa Esser. Thank you for being a great mayor. I have a question about what is the right thing to do. One day I was driving in Milwaukee and I saw a car that did not have a license plate. I did nothing. What should I have done? What is the appropriate response when you see a car that does not have a license plate? On another day, I saw some people selling drugs. Again, I did nothing. I am not a police officer. I don't have a bulletproof vest. I didn't even beat my horn, which I really wanted to do. I was told, do nothing, do not aggravate, stay calm. Eventually, they drove away. But what is the appropriate response? I don't know what police precinct I was in. I don't know what phone number I should have called. I just was frustrated. I was like, why are people selling drugs? Why are cars driving around without license plates?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think your answer was in the question. I know you're not a police officer yourself, but I mean, again, obviously we have a police department in the city of Milwaukee that does a lot of really incredible work to keep our community safe each and every single day. If there's not a imminent crime where somebody is being harmed that's taken place, my recommendation would be to call the police to our non-emergency number and report it. So get the make, the model of the vehicle, as much information, descriptive information that you possibly can, and then report that to the police that way so that they can then follow up. I would tell my constituents all the time when I was alderman and hosted town hall meetings across the 2nd District on the northwest side of the city that the police department is a data-driven agency. And so the more information that we're able to feed the police department, the better they're able to then go and investigate, follow up, and address some of the situations like the ones that you were just talking about. So as much information that you possibly can gather take that information, and especially if there's no imminent threat or harm that's happening, call our non-emergency number and follow up and give that information to the police. There's also just before you go on, there's also a anonymous tip line as well that you can call. It's 414-224-TIPS, I want to say. Crime Stoppers. Yes, sir.
Jeff Smoller, you charmed Speaker Voss so far that he asked if you'd run for president someday.
I'm sorry, say it again?
You charmed Speaker Voss so much so that he suggested you might want to run for president someday.
I just wanted him to repeat that so that.
Last week you were at the memorial service for Mr. Farrell. Governor Thompson gave you a shout out, a Democrat in Waukesha honoring a Republican who had passed. You mentioned this just moments ago, Tom Tiffany, in a negative sense. So let's pretend that he becomes governor. What nice things are you able to say about Tom Tiffany, maybe more so tomorrow than today, if he is the governor of Wisconsin and you have to say nice things about him, like you said about Speaker Voss?
Well, I appreciate that the speaker said that about me. Look, I will, just as an aside, all right? I don't think it surprises anybody in this room at all that I'm a Democrat. Anybody know that? Okay. So, I do appreciate that from the speaker. And when I first got involved with this YMCA program that I keep pointing to with Tom, the fact of the matter is that this was before Barack Obama, right? In fact, the reason why I got involved in this, why I'm standing here right now as mayor, is because I was encouraged by a Republican president, George W. Bush. When I was involved in the YMCA program, the goal was to get kids, low-income communities from Milwaukee to go off to college, which again, I was the first person in my family to attend and graduate. The other part was to get those same kids involved in public service and giving back. And I fell in love with helping people. That's really what it was. I liked helping seniors to rake leaves and shovel snow and feed the homeless and pick up litter. I just fell in love with helping people in my community. And then months later, 9/11 happened. And I watched George W. Bush, as a 14-year-old kid, go to the rubble that was left of the World Trade Center and wrap his arm around a firefighter and just try to bring our country together during that very difficult time. And it was in that moment that I knew that I had to do this. So it was actually a Republican president that encouraged me to run for office, to get involved and to serve my community, my state, and country, perhaps one day, maybe. Leave it to Speaker Voss, perhaps. What would I say nice about Representative Tiffany? So I was on up front a couple of weeks ago, and I said then that if Tom Tiffany were to be elected governor, it would be my intention to work with him. It's my intention to work with David Crowley, just to be clear, because that's who I want to be governor the most. But if Tom Tiffany were to be elected governor, I'd have to work with him, much like I had to work with Speaker Voss. I'm not in charge of whoever Wisconsin sends to Madison. I just have to deal with it, right? That's the approach that I took when I became mayor and the city was on the verge of financial collapse. Was the legislature made up the way that I would prefer? No, but I had a choice. I could either sit on my hands and point fingers and blame, or I could actually roll my sleeves up and get to work. And that's exactly what I did. So if Tom Tiffany were to be elected governor, then absolutely. I'd work with him and try to get the best deal that I possibly could for the city of Milwaukee. And I don't know Representative Tiffany well enough to have nice things to say, or terribly bad things to say about him personally. I think his mother is pretty funny on the commercials, right? Breakfast at the Tiffany's and stuff like that. But we'll see what that relationship looks like when or if the time comes. But my hope and goal is for David Crowley to be elected the next governor of Wisconsin.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you for being here and being a symbol of hope in elected officials. Thank you. You mentioned Camp Rise. Can you please explain to our group what it is, why you helped create it, and how it serves our community and our future?
Oh, yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So Camp Rise is a program that I am very fond of, so fond of, in fact, that I have often said that when I eventually leave this office, it'll be the thing that I am the most proud of. It'll be the thing that I'm the most proud of. And the reason why Camp Rise started was this, is again, because of my lived experience growing up in Milwaukee and knowing how important it is to have caring adults and mentors that wrap their arms around young people in our city. Early on in my tenure as mayor, I saw a news story in which somebody had asked this classroom full of young black men, how many of them had stolen cars, driven a car recklessly, things like that. This was, again, about 5 years ago when reckless driving was completely out of control. And every single hand in that classroom went up. And I thought immediately, like, we have to find some other way to engage with these young people, right? Because we're gonna end up losing them, or they're gonna do bad things, they're gonna hurt, other people. And I don't want that to happen in Milwaukee. And so I worked with some leaders in our community that had a passion for working with young people. I called up the superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools. I called up the leader of our workforce development agency, Employee Milwaukee, and I called up Governor Tony Evers and said that this is an urgent issue that we have to address. We have to find some alternative to steer these young people, these young men, in a better direction. And so we put together a framework that allowed these young men who live in the same sort of neighborhoods like I lived in growing up, who are exposed to death, harm, destruction, violence, domestic violence, drugs, stealing, all that stuff, and pull them out of that environment into a better one. And that's what Camp Rise represents, that better environment. Now, those same kids, right? They get the opportunity to have adults around them that care for them. And if they didn't have that at home, that means so much more. If they did have that at home, that's in addition to what they have in their life. They get exposed to things outside of their neighborhood. My dad used to tell me when I was a kid, my dad used to say, Cavalier, you got to get off the block, right? And when I was a kid, I thought to myself, oh, well, I could just cross the street, Dad, and I'll be off the block. But he meant more than that. He's talking about expanding your horizons. And for too many kids, for too many Black and Latino young men, primarily in our city, the block is not in the physical sense. It's the four corners. It's home, school, the corner store, and a relative's house. For too many of our kids, like, that's their whole world. And so we're showing kids these other really incredible spaces. Just last week, as a matter of fact, we took 2,000 kids, not just from Camp Rise, but from other programs around the city, to a ball game at American Family Field. For so many of those kids, it's their first time being in the ballpark. You should see every single year what I see. Like, their eyes, they light up, and they have these wonderful experiences. And I know this because I live this myself, that when those kids have a positive experience, they yearn for more positive experiences. So what does that mean? That means they're going to stay on the straight and narrow because they want to continue to have those positive experiences. That's what Camp Rise represents. And ultimately, what it represents is greater public safety for us all, and it puts those kids in a better position to be productive, contributing members to our society, which is what I want as mayor, yes, but it's also what I want as a citizen for every single kid in Milwaukee. And we started with 200 boys. The biggest complaint that we got was that girls weren't allowed, so now we've expanded it. Now we've got a couple hundred girls that are involved in the program as well. And it presents me with an opportunity outside of my visits to schools around the city to engage with these kids in the summer, and especially to tell those young men that were the inspiration for starting this in the first place, to stay on their P's and Q's, but then also to make sure that they're treating young women in the way that they should be treated, with dignity and respect. Because I see too many stories, and I get notified every time there's a domestic violence incident that happens in our city. And I think to myself, man, only if some of these men had a man in their own lives that told them straight up that you need to respect women and treat women the same way you want your sister, your mother, your grandmother, your niece, your cousin that you like. Treat them with the same respect that you expect, those ladies to be treated with. I think the world would be a better place. So
Thank you.
that's Camp Rise. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.